takes her second gold medal at these World Championships.
And that completes our coverage from Lausanne, and now we concentrate on events here on the Solent with the start of the Whitbread Round the World race some 45 minutes away. I'm joined by the likes of Howard Gibbons, who's the shore manager for the British entry, also Penny Smith, Laurie Smith's wife. We'll be talking to both of them very shortly. Let's give you an idea of what's happening out on the water. And there is the British entry, skippered by Laurie Smith, just circulating at the moment. And like everyone else, enjoying a spectacular air display courtesy of the Red Arrows. That's been going on for the last 10 minutes or so, and it's being enjoyed by tens of thousands who are lining the shoreline here at Cowes, and also by the thousands of small craft who are circulating around the Solent and getting ready to follow this race down the first few miles, heading out towards the Needles, and then the 10 craft head to the open sea beyond that. So these 10 craft, these 10 racing machines are going to get a marvellous send-off with a tremendous atmosphere generated at Cowes, largely through the Red Arrows at the moment. And it really does illustrate how far this race has come as a world event, as the #1 event in the sport. And there's the British entry at the moment, just circulating like the other 9 yachts, preparing to move up to the start line in about 15 minutes or so. But today this race is the ultimate in yachting technology and sophistication. But when it was first staged back in 1973, it was all very different. We'll show you how the race has evolved through the last 24 years.
The first single-handed voyage around the world was made by Joshua Slocum in a 37-foot yacht in 1895. It took 3 years to make the journey, stopping off at numerous ports for supplies. "68 years later, the English explorer Sir Francis Chichester set off to make the voyage as quickly as possible. He stopped off only once, in Sydney, and returned a national hero. In 1968, Sir Robin Knox-Johnson made the first non-stop voyage. The next step was to turn this voyage into a race. "1973 saw the launch of the first Whitbread Round the World race, crewed mainly by amateurs. One of the leading players was Shea Blythe, with a crew of paratroopers. Claire Francis became the first woman skipper in 1977. The largest ever assembled fleet took part in 1981, with the crews experiencing some of the worst weather ever. Several boats were damaged, but the race was won by Dutchman Connie van Richthofen. 1985 saw rock star Simon Le Bon join his yacht Drum. Disaster struck in the Fastnet race when Drum capsized, and Le Bon was lucky not to lose his life. 1989, a New Zealander, Peter Blake, made his 5th appearance, and Tracy Edwards skippered the first all-female crew on Maiden. The 1993 race was closer than ever, and new broadcasting technology brought us nearer the action. It was Grant Dalton who won with the fastest ever time for a Whitbread boat.
And you wonder whose names will be added to the history books when they return home next May. Well, here at the Solent, the excitement is building. As we've seen, the 10 yachts are all out on the Solent preparing for the start. It's just moments away. It's taken years of preparation, but now the countdown is almost over. There is the British Challenge making their final preparations with their skipper Laurie Smith. But earlier today, they were, of course, in Ocean Village in Southampton, and preparing for the off. 32,000 miles ahead of them, all the challenging seas to look forward to. But when they were in Ocean Village earlier this morning, they had an extra crew member for just a while, and of course was Steve Ryder.
Laurie, an emotional send-off. Sum up your feelings at this point.
Yeah, you know, it's difficult with kids and wives and stuff. Everyone's a bit tearful, but I mean, you know, we're only gone for 4 weeks, and a lot of them are coming out to South Africa. So, you know, it is a bit hard, but you know, we're out there now and got to get on with what we're doing. You know.
The build-up has been intense. It's been a year. It's been more than a year.
Yeah.
Is everything covered from your point of view? Do you stand here with any kind of regret, saying, "I wish we had more time to do this or do that"?
No, we're in good shape, I think. Of course, you know, you can't see what's going to happen with breakages and things, but we've done as much as we wanted to do, and we think we've covered every scenario, you know, but who knows? I mean, it's quite a tricky forecast for tonight. You know, it's going to be a decent breeze out at the start, but tonight the wind's going to go very light, so we're sort of looking ahead to that at the moment, and obviously getting out in the Solent in one piece without picking up any penalties or hitting anybody or hitting any spectator boats. And, you know, it's going to be pretty chaotic out there.
You said it's possibly your last round the world race. It's certainly your best chance. Sum up the buzz that you get out of the 9 months to come.
Well, you know, it'll be a buzz if we're right in there, you know, in the first few. It's a long race. You know, you don't have to win every leg, but you've got to be there or thereabouts, and you know that's what we're here for. And you know, everybody wants to do as good a job as they can. You know, there's a long way to go around if you're not going to do well. So you know, we get a lot of satisfaction out of doing a good job.
Laurie, we wish you the best. You've got an enormous amount of support here at Southampton and the start line at Cowes as well. We'll give you a good send-off also. Let's bring in Steve Hales, because you mentioned that the forecast for a little bit later is interesting. Steve Hales, the navigator here. What can you tell us about what's to come over the next 24 hours?
As Laurie's already said, we should get a good breeze out of the Solent and first part of the English Channel, but we've got some very interesting thunderstorms and much lighter and shiftier winds down in the Western Channel, which we should probably bump into tonight. So that's going to be very, very tricky, and exactly how the breeze is going to settle in after that is a little bit questionable at the moment, but it'll be easy out of here, and I think it's going to be a very tricky night.
What's the different kind of challenge that you'll have in the few miles off the start line with all the traffic that's going to be around?
Obviously, there'll be a lot of spectator boats out there, so we're just trying to get out the Solent in good shape and make sure we don't hit anybody, don't get involved in any penalties. It's very important that we don't have to do any take any penalties or do any turns. We don't want time penalties, so we just need to be out in good shape, nice and clean, and get out in the channel and then sort of concentrate on the job.
No home comforts at all for the next month, so how did the crew spend the last few hours before the off?
I actually had a few bits and pieces to keep an eye on with the weather, so I was down here fairly late last night, but the rest of the guys I think were just at home and packing their lives up for 9 months.
And to you, it's as much a technological exercise as everything else. That's what really excites you about what's to come.
Yeah, we've got an awful lot of technical equipment on the boat, and all the computer systems I've managed to put together myself, which is nice, and the whole thing is moving in that direction, but that suits me just fine.
But today it's all emotion and excitement. The technology comes later. We wish you the best for a great race.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Steve. Gordon McQuire, number 2 to Laurie Smith, already at the wheel. Explain how the crew has come together over the last few months and the kind of chemistry that's been created.
Well, in the early stages, when Laurie and I were putting the crew together, which would have been August of last year, 9-10 months ago, we worked very hard to find people who were technically good sailors, but also got on. We both in the past raced in multinational crews and often found there have been big breakdowns when there's been a crisis because people, A, don't understand languages perfectly and also didn't, for example, share things like sense of humour. We've got a crew here who live and think and eat the same and understand the same jokes, and it makes a huge difference.
And there's absolutely no room for egos out here, is there?
No, I'm afraid not. Anybody with an ego got dismissed pretty early on in the programme. We rely very heavily on each other, and if you make a mistake, you know the guys around will just bail you out, and there's no witch hunting or finger pointing. You just get on with the job.
Now you're competing and racing 24 hours a day, so how does the crewing work? How does the watch system work?
Well, we split the group up into 2 groups, and while one group is on deck working, that's a group of 5, the other 5 are down below sleeping. I run one of those watches, and we just rotate 4 hours on, 4 hours off for the next 30 days.
But all on deck and all up for the start in a few minutes' time. It's going to be fairly perilous down the Solent, isn't it?
The Solent is going to be quite exciting. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some incidents. I guess what happens at the start, everybody's quite excited, the adrenaline's starting to flow, and the spectators want to get in close to have a look at everybody, and inevitably there's a clash of conflict, so it could be quite amusing.
What sort of morale boost can it give to be first round the Needles? I mean, it's no significance in race terms, but in terms of morale?
It's always nice just to make a nice clean start and be in the front runners. Our objective will not necessarily to be leading out of the Solent, but to be in the front group. And once you're there, you settle down. It's quite a scary time, and we won't want to be taking any risks. With a lot of boats around, we'll be trying to stay away and stay out of trouble. We really don't hold much credence on being first out. It is 7,300 miles after all.
And you and the rest of the crew's great atmosphere around the race. You're all mates, aren't you?
Yes, just a bunch of lads together, really. We're off on holidays. Not.
And if you believe that, you believe anything. That was Gordon Maguire talking just a little bit earlier. Now we're a little further out on the Solent where the swell is heavy, and we've come virtually alongside, as far as we can, alongside the British entry. And alongside me is Howard Gibbons, who's the shore manager, and also Penny Smith as well. Howard, first of all, a quick word about what will be going on the boat at the moment.
Well, all the boys will be on deck, as you can see, and they'll shortly have a quick run-through of what they're assessing the situation and a quick run-through of what they're going to do for the start of the race, which sails they're going to be setting, which way they're going to approach the line, and shortly they'll be manoeuvring up and down the line and doing some timed runs to make sure they get the right start.
One of the crew members, Jan Dekker, went up the rigging just a few minutes ago. He was just showing off, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's had a little job to do. He had to get the Royal Southampton Yacht Club Burgee down and meant a bit of swinging around on the shrouds there.
Now, Penny, it's a difficult time for all the families left behind. Give us an idea of the motivation of Laurie over the last year or so and how focused he's been on this one event.
Well, 100% focused. I mean, we've hardly seen him. He started off in Portugal last year with the F, and he lived there really up and through till March. And then the silk cut thing took off, so he swapped over campaigns. And although he's been in this country, he's been working some pretty serious hours, and we haven't seen a great deal of him.
He's got this wonderful laid-back appearance, but he absorbs everything, and he's totally focused on everything.
Yeah, completely focused, yeah.
During the course of the race, as I say, it's not easy for the families. How much do you keep in touch with each other, the families of the rest of the crews, the other crews indeed? Is there much rapport going on back on shore?
What, with regard to myself with the other crews,
yeah,
or myself with Silk Cut?
Well, yourself with the families of the other crews and the families of the crews of the other boats, you must all stick together, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've done sort of 3 Whitbreads now, and there are a few girls who have done about as many as I have, so we all know each other very well. And we've all moved on, and we've all had children, and gone are the days of being single and free to do what you like. And obviously the Silk Cut girls, I don't know them that well, to be honest, because this time round I've had a small family to look after, and we're living in Lymington. I haven't been as closely involved with the syndicate as I would have been otherwise. But we'll get to know each other better as we start going around the world.
You'll get out to a few of the stopovers?
Yes, we're going to Cape Town. We leave in 4 weeks, and then we go on to Australia, and we'll see Laurie in Fremantle, Sydney, and then on to Auckland. And then my little boy's coming up for 6. We'll have to get back and get him into school.
In the meantime, I highly recommend our weekly highlights programme, which will go out on BBC Two once a week, 7 o'clock, I think, BBC Two. Howard, the role of the shore manager, is all your hard work done? They're heading off out onto the ocean now.
Well, there's still quite a lot of hard work to do, because now we have to pack up the container with all the spare parts, equipment, extra sails, clothing, and get that off to Cape Town on Tuesday, and wind up the office here, and then get down to Cape Town and set up containers, offices, accommodation for the crew when they get there, administration. Meanwhile, daily contact with the boat by email to make sure that everything's going smoothly. If they need anything, they contact me, and I make sure it's shoreside when they get in at the end of the leg.
Howard, thanks very much indeed. Penny, thanks very much indeed. Stick with us, Howard. We'll have other things to discuss as the start gets nearer, I'm sure, but for the time being, we'll go back to Sue on dry land.
Indeed. Well, of course, we have been following the British yacht with interest as it makes its final preparations for the 32,000-mile journey. It promises to be the longest and hardest race yet. But the British yacht is one of the favourites, but it's only one of 10 that will be starting here today. I think it's about time that we brought you up to date with all the runners and riders.
It's the most competitive fleet ever. This is the lineup for the 1997 Whitbread Round the World race. Toshiba, the dream team from the USA. Dennis Conner and Chris Dixon, two former rivals turned teammates. Last time, Dixon nearly won. A dismasting stopped that. This time, he's going for gold. Merritt Cup, sailing for Monaco. On board, experienced skipper Grant Dalton. This boat has the most Whitbread experience aboard. Silk Cut from Great Britain. For the first time, Great Britain believes it can actually win the Whitbread Round the World race. At the helm, Laurie Smith, charismatic and with a respect to the whole crew. America's Challenge. This could be the dark horse in the race, definitely one to watch. The crew came together late, and the skipper, Ross Field, is a famous sailor. Last time on Yamaha, he lifted that trophy. Can he do it again? Swedish match. Skippered by Gunnar Krantz and with huge funding, this could be Scandinavia's best chance of victory. However, she's not currently rated amongst the very top runners. Chesney Racing, the third USA boat, and the only amateur boat in the race. 57-year-old George Collins put this one together, and he's operating a squad system, choosing the best people for the best jobs and different people for the short and long legs. It's an interesting combination. From Norway, Knut Frostad is skippering Innovation Caverna. Knut Frostad is the youngest skipper, just 30. He's determined to win. EF Language from Sweden. Now the hopes of this syndicate rest squarely on the shoulders of one man. Paul Kayar. Now he's a Whitbread virgin, but when it comes to other things, he's got an impressive track record. 6 times a sailing world champion and an America's Cup veteran. Brunel Sunnergy from Holland. A campaign without big funding. The new skipper, Hans Buchelt, has got his work cut out just to get in the top half of the fleet. EF Education from Sweden is sister ship to EF Language. This one's an all-woman team with a point to prove. However, for Christine Guillot and her crew, a top 5 position in any leg would be a great achievement.
So those are the 10 yachts that will line up at the start, and what a send-off they will get here at Cowes, not only on the water but also on the promenade and indeed from the garden here at the Royal Yacht Squadron. We're only about, less than half an hour now to the start. Ideal conditions for the start as they head off on the 32,000-mile journey, but it's difficult to imagine exactly what sort of conditions they will face en route, indeed in the Southern Ocean. Well, to give us an idea of exactly what it will be like, here's meteorologist Vincent Geek.
Down to latitudes 40, 50 degrees south, apart from Cape Horn, that's the only piece of land that's down there. Otherwise the waves can just go on round and round the world, driven by the big storms that are down there. You can get storms maybe 600, 800 miles across. You'll ride one of those for as long as you can. Eventually the storms which have been going through at maybe 25, 30 miles an hour, the boat can't keep up with them. You'll fall off the back of it. You briefly get becalmed, even the Southern Oceans you'll be becalmed. Then the next storm comes along, picks you up, and you're off again. 100-foot waves, quite easily seen down there, waves that are taller than the height of a mast on these boats. Again, there's nothing to obstruct them. They can just keep running for days on end. Sometimes boats in the Southern Ocean can pick up snow, can pick up ice on the rigging, then the boat's going to go more slowly. The other thing is the deck gear freezes up, you can't operate the deck properly. And also people, when they get cold, they just cannot work as effectively and as hard as they would when they're warmer. The icebergs that you get in the Southern Oceans have all come from Antarctica. The larger icebergs aren't a major problem to us because we can see them on the radar, they're very visible. It's when they start breaking and you get smaller bergs that you have trouble picking them up and they're more of a danger, and you really are relying on your eyes.
Horrifying conditions, and someone who knows all about it, of course, is Tony Bullymore, who I'm sure many of you will remember from the news. A horrifying ordeal, 3 days in an upturned boat. A lot of people said it was like an upturned coffin. What was it like?
Well, it was pretty tough. It was actually 5 days, actually, but it was tough going. But you hang in there, don't you? I mean, the determination to keep alive is what it's all about.
Describe what it was like, though.
It was a little bit like a washing machine from hell inside the boat. I was trying to find somewhere to stay, and that's it.
We just got some pictures of you being rescued. I mean, it must have been... Had you given up hope at all?
No, you never give up hope. You hang in there, you keep looking at the logistics and changing from one idea to another. You keep changing your ideas of how to stay alive. All the time you're trying to be positive that someone is coming to rescue you, and you hang in there. That's what it's all about.
How else did you bide the time?
Thinking about my past and finding little jobs to do, wading up and down in the water, swimming out of the boat to try and release the life raft, trying to keep myself warm, banging my feet against the bulkhead 100 times every half an hour or so, and singing the odd tune and keep my lungs working, and tapping my fingers to keep my fingers working.
But it took its toll, didn't it? Because you were injured.
I was injured. You know, I had frostbite, I was dehydrated, I'd lost one of my fingers nearly cut off in the companionway entrance. It was pretty bad. The Australians did a wonderful job. Without the Australians, I wouldn't be here now, that's for sure.
Talk about the conditions, though, as well, that you face on around the world.
Well, I think the thing is, I sort of talk about, the roaring 40s, the impossible 50s, and the screaming 60s. And when you get up to the 70s and 80s, that can really turn your world upside down, as I now know. But I think that all of the Whitbread boats have got highly skilled and professional crew. The boats have been well tried. They're designed for Southern Ocean racing. And I think if they did get into a little trouble, they will get out of it. They've got very big crews and they've got all the equipment on board to survive.
You talk about that. I mean, they're talking about favourites in this race. Is it easy to pick a favourite? Because so much can happen.
Well, it seems simple, but I'd like to think that any boat can win. You know, they're all highly trained crews. They're great boats, every last one of them. If I was putting my money, if I was having a bet on it, I think I would probably go for Laurie Smith on Silk Cut, Toshiba and Merritt. Somewhere in there, I think that there's going to be trouble. I think the three of them are, like the others, are Formula One drivers, and they keep their foot down all the time. Laurie Smith is a highly skilled man. He's one of the best. And I'd like to see him bring the trophy back to England, quite frankly.
Well, we'd all say that. Now, we're basking in the sunshine here. I mean, Steve's saying it's a little choppy out there, but I know you'd say these are ideal conditions.
Well, as it so happens, we've got a bit of tide against wind, but I think that when the boats get out past the Needles, it's going to smooth off a bit. It's going to be a wonderful start. We've got northeasterlies. It's blowing about 12 or 14 knots of wind. I think it's going to be spinnakers up, and it's going to be absolutely spectacular.
And you were saying it's going to smooth out a bit.
I think so. I think when they get out into the channel, it's going to, the seas will be, in fact, it's very calm and nice here now, but I think they'll even be a little better out there.
God. Tell me, what about your sailing? Did that put you off at all, or have you got back in a boat?
No, not at all. In fact, I've got a new project on the way now. I've got a new racing boat, which is going to be called Lionheart. It's a 60-foot round-the-world racing boat, and I'll be racing in around alone next year. I've got to talk to a lot of people about that. My wife is quite happy with it now, I hope. And I'm getting fit. I'm now into training and all sorts of things like that. I'd love to have been on one of the Whitbread boats, in fact, but I've got a lot on at the moment and it really wasn't possible.
Well, it's amazing for a lot of people to think you even want to get back in a boat, but well done. Enjoy the build-up, and thanks very much for joining us and telling the story.
Terrific.
Okay, well, here at the Solent, of course, we're on the countdown to the start of the big race, and I said it's lovely conditions here. We're basking in the sunshine. I'm sure Steve is basking in the sunshine somewhere out on the choppy Solent. There he is.
Yes, we've got no shortage of sunshine. We've got a heavy swell as well, and a marvellous sense of anticipation as that 2 o'clock start gets nearer. We've got sails going up on the entries out on the Solent at the moment, and there's the British entry just biding its time. 2 o'clock start, and the route ahead of them, well, it's an extraordinary one. You think there was only one way around the world, but this year the race is significantly different to the 6 previous races that have taken place. More legs, different stopovers, but the extraordinary challenge remains the same. So this is the route that the boats will follow over the next 8 months.
On leaving Southampton, the crews head south through the Atlantic. crossing through the calm of the doldrums. From there, the boats swing east to Cape Town. After Cape Town, the ships make their first crossing of the Southern Ocean, where they will encounter icebergs and pounding seas on their way to Australia. They're the first of 2 sprint legs, which should hopefully see the boats in port for Christmas. The first leg of 1998 is another sprint to Auckland, the home of yachting. Leg 5, this is renowned as the hardest of the race, back through the Southern Ocean and round the infamous Cape Horn. And north to Brazil. After the horrors of the Southern Ocean, the 6th leg will see the cruise with warm skies as they continue from Rio north to Florida. And then another short sprint to Annapolis before the final stretch. The Atlantic Ocean, the cruise could face icebergs as well as some treacherous seas before reaching La Rochelle. The final short hop after 31,000 miles and home to a hero's welcome.
That, of course, will be in 9 months' time. They're getting quite a send-off here at the Solent, of course, just going through their final preparations. Still a few moments away to the start, but the tension is building here. The crowds are building. So much excitement here. The boats left Ocean Village earlier this morning after years of preparation, and now the start of that long, long journey is about to begin. But as we toured, ideal conditions here, a strong easterly as they start their journey down towards the Needles and then on to Cape Town. There's Merritt Cup. Ralph Dalton, the skipper, and certainly one of the favourites. Now, we've talked about the yachts in great detail. They are very, very similar, the W60s, with just a few little tweaks here and there. But let's find out a little bit more now, because Cole Sheen of Merritt Cup gave us a guided tour.
Well, here are the steering wheels the skipper steers the boat with. As you can see, there's 2 of them. The main idea is to allow the skipper of the boat to see the sails up at the front. Also here we have the compass, much like a normal compass, which allows the skipper of the boat to steer a course as recommended by the navigator. These are life rafts, which would be probably the last thing you'd ever want to get into when you leave a yacht, maybe when you're in distress. They're both filled with water-making things, fishing lines, where we can catch a fish, and there's a small amount of food in there as well. Over here we have these large winches. These ones here are for winding the sails up and down the mast. This one's here used by the trimmers. The trimmers are responsible for the speed aspect of the boat. Over here, to get those winches working, we have what's called the coffee grinder. And these buddy control all the speed on the boat. Here we have the mainsail, the driving force behind the yacht. Quite a large sail, as you can see. This stuff here is called Kevlar, same stuff that tennis rackets and bulletproof vests are made out of. This is the engine room of the boat. And we go through quite a lot of these, as this is the speed that enables you to win the race. Okay, now we're on the foredeck of the yacht, where most of the action goes down. You'll find the skipper yelling and screaming at you a lot of the time. In very big seas like we'll be getting in the Southern Ocean, this is not a very happy place to be. The waves are constantly crashing over the whole yacht, and you get very, very wet. You have to be clipped on at all times to stop you falling over the side. It's just not a lot of fun up here at all. Even further in front of the foredeck is the bow of the boat, the sharp end, where you have to be like an acrobat to learn how to sail these boats. You can't hear the skipper yelling at you because you're too far to the front, which is quite a bonus. This thing here is the spinnaker pole, which allows us to put up our big masthead spinnakers, which will make the boat go the fastest you'll ever see. It's an awesome sight with this big sail out the front. Okay, I've shown you the outside of the boat. Now we're going to have a good look around the inside. Okay, we're now on the galley of the yacht. Through the years, it's all changed. As you can see, it's very compact and small, lightweight, you could say. Here we have the kettle for cups of tea and coffee. The pot here, one pot's all we're taking. What we do have, though, is a desalinator unit. Basically, this transfers salt water to fresh water at about the rate of about a gallon a minute. It's very high-tech, basic for us. I'm now lying in one of the 12 bunks we have on board the yacht. As you can see, with most things on this yacht, there's not a lot of room. When you've spent 4 hours on deck racing down through icebergs and snow and fog, it's one of the best places to be, and there's nothing better than to just crash out.
So definitely built for speed rather than comfort, and there is Merrick Cup out on the Solent, live at the moment, right up among the favourites for this race, under the skippership of the brilliant New Zealander Grant Dalton. Howard Gibbons, the shore manager of the British entry, is with us, and Laurie Smith would have a high regard for Merrick Cup and indeed Toshiba.
Yes, indeed. We consider that to be the main opposition, both highly experienced and tough campaigners.
The boats have engines. We should mention that because they've motored their way out to the start. That's the only use that they get out of them, isn't it?
Start and finish. Also, they are required to have it because in case of emergency, if there is something goes wrong and they have to use the engine to get into port, well, that's one aspect. And of course, if that happens, then you have to log it.
Now, the engines and more particularly the propeller, it was the main crisis that the British entry has had this past week. Because, about a week ago, the propeller fell off, didn't it?
Yes, we're just doing the arrival into Ocean Village on Saturday afternoon. A few people there and a big intro, and just as we're coming on the dock, unbeknownst to the world, the prop fell off and hit the bottom of Ocean Village Marina. Extensive search by the divers didn't find it, so we had to scrabble around a bit to get another one, and we eventually got one sent from Denmark, which arrived on Wednesday. It wasn't the same prop we had originally, so it had to be re-engineered onto the prop shaft. Then the measurers had to see it had to be weighed, it had to be refitted to the boat underwater on the dock, and then we had to be recertificated for the race. So there's a bit of a paper chase. So it was all a bit of a hassle. We couldn't have, could have done without this week, but apart from that, everything went pretty smoothly.
But it's now sails you depend on more than propellers, and
yes.
How secretive has been all the sail technology and tactics and cat and mouse stuff of the last few weeks?
Well, there's a fair amount of secrecy about it. I mean, Laurie's pretty canny when it comes to these things, and we've had an extensive sail testing program. And the thing is that eventually these secrets get out because people will see the sails on the boat, but you try and play cards close to your chest to make sure that you've got something up your sleeve. And in just developing a new cut for the sail, or all within the rules, but actually, just trying to get the best amount of speed out of perhaps a new concept.
Well, we'll talk more as the race develops, and the start takes place now in about 15 minutes' time, so we will talk to Howard about tactics and how the first few miles unfold down to the Needles. But now let's go out to race coverage and see the build-up to that start. And our commentators are Peter Montgomery and Richard Simmons.
The Solent is a pageant of colour and vibrance as we're on the countdown now to the start of the 7th Whitbread Round the World race. Absolutely magnificent conditions. The wind at 20 knots from just slightly south of east. So that means it'll be a maritime stampede from right out in front of the Royal Yacht Squadron. For the first time, the Whitbread Round the World yacht race will start off the Royal Yacht Squadron.
The boats enter the starting area off the Royal Yacht Squadron at Cowes. The first gun goes at 10 minutes and another at 5. The Duke of York fires the starting cannon at 2 p.m. and the boats head west down the Solent. Now we're covering the race from the south, watching the boats leave the Solent from right to left. As they leave Cowes, the tide will start to flow with them, and in these winds, perfect conditions with the wind behind them, they'll be down towards the Needles and the open ocean. En route, they'll pass some famous landmarks, including Hurst Castle, and that's where the tide will really be ripping them through. And then it's on to those famous landmarks, the Needles, distinctive row of rocks at the western tip of the Isle of Wight. And that will be the crew's last sight of land. It'll be choppy down there, and the crowds will be lining the shore on both sides. And then it's off into the first lonely night, and the prospect of the next 4 weeks will be weighing heavily.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, gun! The 10-minute gun is gone. His Royal Highness the Duke of York alongside, watching the countdown, as he will fire the gun at 2 o'clock. Magnificent view Prince Andrew will have from the Royal Yacht Squadron in the castle right on the point. We can see the channel now that is clear, that Richard described from the start box. Now the yachts are moving back into the start box area. We can see there are cruise vessels along the northern boundary as well. In the background is the mainland, Southampton in the background.
Great view there of Laurie Smith, the British team, distinctive purple boat that. The boats now, they've got to be careful not to get into trouble, very crowded out there. Gordon Maguire now at the helm. Everyone, very tense atmosphere there. They've got to keep out of trouble. There's 4,000 or 5,000 spectator craft out of there. There's no talking on that boat. This from the camera on board.
So now we can see the competing yachts running back up and down the start line. The actual start line directly out in front of the Royal Yacht Squadron is 4 cables, or around 800 metres. So they'll run up and down the start line. This is Merit Cup under the flag of the Yacht Club of Monaco, skippered by Grant Dalton from New Zealand, who won the last Whitbread in the maxi class aboard New Zealand Endeavour and set the fastest time around the world. He has a lot of veterans aboard there, some outstanding sailors. And again, this is a special camera aboard Merit Cup. So Grant Dalton there, he has with him Mike Quilter, the navigator, Kevin Shoebridge, a couple of seasoned warriors who know how to win the Whitbread, who know how to go the distance.
It's quite lumpy out there, isn't it, Peter? They've got to be careful. There's a lot of spectator boats, a lot of sea running. It's 20 knots, but it feels lumpier out there.
Well, the tide is still coming in. Around 2 o'clock it actually turns, and there will be a current of about half a knot over by the shore that we can see in the background off the Royal Yacht Squadron. And then the magic carpet ride of the tide going out west towards the English Channel. This is Toshiba. This is one of the bookies' favourites, with Chris Dixon. Standing behind Chris Dixon in the blonde hair is Andrew Cape, an Australian, who is an outstanding navigator.
Interesting that. Toshiba 11-4, they are the bookies' favourites. Then it's Merit Cup 3-1, Innovation Caverna 7-2, and Laurie Smith 4-1.
So they're all pretty quiet and calm aboard Toshiba. They will have made their decision. Andrew Cape will be talking all the time to Chris Dixon and the others in the afterguard, the Brains Trust, who make the decisions. I spoke to Andrew Cape yesterday and he said yes, it's just like the Admiral's Cup, that they will try and stay close into the Royal Yacht Squadron, but you'll have 10 other skippers and navigators who want to do the same thing.
Yeah, they've got to be so careful here. This is a world race. They could blow an awful lot just by causing problems at the start. There could be a collision, Peter. I mean, what are the chances of that? It's blowing quite hard out there.
Well, I think certainly the chances of a collision between the boats. This is America's Challenge, skippered by Ross Field, and now he skippered the winning boat in the Whitbread 60 last time. That is Yamaha. And Ross Field, this is a last-minute effort.
1 minute.
So just 6 minutes now to go, as we hear the voice from the Royal Yacht Squadron saying 1 minute to the 5-minute gun. So the chances of a collision, well, there's two separate issues, isn't there? One between the competing boats, And then the other issue, trying to dodge the spectator craft. It won't be too bad at the start because there is this channel that has been well set. This is Grant Dalton.
Talking to the crews, this may be a world race, but they care about this start. There's an awful lot at stake. There's a psychological aspect of popping out past the needles first.
Well, they really want to start the way they want to finish, and that is in the top groove. And these sailors start playing on confidence. Once they get a good start and they're going up into the English Channel, they can really go well.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
5 minutes to the start of the 1997 Whitbread Round the World race for the Volvo Trophy.
So now this is getting serious, as the navigators and tacticians will be talking amongst themselves, and this certainly will be the case aboard this beautiful blue vessel. This is a Swedish match, skippered by Gunnar Krantz. And behind, alongside Gunnar Krantz, is Earl Williams, a New Zealander who knows how to win the Whitbread, and also Roger Nilsson, who is the navigator.
Just behind Swedish match, Innovation Caverna. Skipper Knut Frostad, 30-year-old, youngest in the crew, in the team here. He's a very, very determined man. Interesting bet that, Innovation Caverna, been ranked 3rd at the moment.
So this is EF Language Education, the women's boat with a multinational crew skippered by Christine Guillot of France, who's yet another in the long line of outstanding women from France. This is Lisa Charles of the United States, who was involved in the women's challenge from America last America's Cup.
Ranked at 66 to 1, outsiders. There'd be great acclaim if they could finish in the top 5 of any leg.
So we can see the clear channel out to the right. This is the Isle of Wight to the left. It is cowsed around in the foreground. We can see the start box area out to the right. And on the northern shore, we can see the cruise ships and the tall ships. Wonderful discipline here with the spectator fleet. I don't know whether we'll be able to quite say that in 15 or 20 or 30 minutes time, but this is absolutely outstanding. It certainly is giving the sailors the opportunity they need, as you can see them now in the start box area.
Just before we go back to that start box area, Peter, thousands of people lining the shore, both in the UK and on the Isle of Wight.
Yes, right along the Isle of Wight, along the greens from Cowes. They're 4 or 5 deep coming away from the Royal Yacht Squadron. Well, make that 10 deep, 12 deep. This is the Royal Yacht Squadron in the background. What an atmosphere. It is building all the time. The expectation of the people on a ferry boat like this, the Brown Sea Ferry, I hope they all don't go to one side. They might have a list to port or starboard. It would be better being on one of the ferry boats in the background. We can see the huge, big Volvo marker buoys to try and protect the channel.
Boats jockeying for position now. Toshiba just behind there. Caverna Innovation just coming in there. They're tucking, remember it's a downwind start, so if you're behind the boat in front, you've taken that wind. So the boats could well be bunching as they go off. Also, good chance one of the boats could be over the line. Big wind, spinnakers up, they're over the line, and that's a penalty, Peter.
That is a key factor in terms of trying not to make sure they're over the line. This is Richard Branson. He's really ringside to a splendid view here.
Innovation Caverna there, diving behind Toshiba. These really are like little racing dinghies, the way they throw them around, but they feel like little racing dinghies, and they're going around the world on them.
Now, in most yacht races, if yachts are over at the line,
1 minute to start. 1 minute.
there is a recall and the penalty, and they can go back to exonerate themselves. Not so here because of the safety aspects. So we're inside the final minute. We're on the countdown now.
45 seconds.
It's 45 seconds. So remember, it's a spinnaker start. It is 20 knots from 100 degrees, or just slightly south of east.
30 seconds.
It's a slingshot start. As you can see the boats coming down, getting ready to hoist their spinnakers on the countdown now to the start by HRH, the Duke of York.
seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The start of the 97-98 Whitbread Round the World Yacht Race for the Volvo Trophy that will take the fleet across 7 seas and take until next May to make it back to the finish and make it Whitbread's Magnificent 7. So EF's got a good start. Toshiba starting right down, right out in front of the Royal Yacht Squadron, has got a magnificent start. Dixon's got it right on the button.
So each side of the racetrack, this side, Toshiba, Chris Dixon, the other side, Laurie Smith and the British team. EF Language was the first to get that Jenniker up though.
Well, that was Paul Kayard with Steve Erickson, a former Olympic gold medalist, got a magnificent start. That's out to the left. So that is EF Language, Paul Kayard.
And far right, that's Toshiba, Chris Dixon.
And to the right here, that is Toshiba, Chris Dixon. So this is EF Language. This is Paul Kayard with Steve Erickson as one of his tacticians. He's got an absolutely outstanding lineup, an America's Cup sailor, and boy, what a start.
Problem on there with Laurie Smith. Spinnaker going up late. They won't be happy about that. They're losing vital ground. They're back in the pack. A lot of activity. Great pictures from the onboard.
Now what they're trying to do is pull the halyard to get the Jenniker or the asymmetrical spinnaker up. The yacht with the yellow Jenniker or spinnaker in the foreground is EF Language, Paul Kayard. What a start. Absolutely magnificent. They've got a slightly hotter angle than Toshiba, and the other boats over closer to the shore of Isle of Wight. It's an absolute maritime stampede off Cowes as they go past the greens, heading towards Egypt Point.
EF Language, Paul Kayard, 6 times world champion. He's never done the Whitbread race. And he's ahead.
That is a magnificent lead to Paul Kayard. Followed then by Swedish Match, has also got a very good start. Laurie Smith and his crew from Britain also are doing well. Further and closer on the inside, it is Toshiba that has done very well. And then Caverna.
Well, Paul Kayard is just going to be so thrilled with that start, isn't it? That is a dream start.
The blood will be pumping now. Remember, they've got half a knot building all the time. The current is coming from right to left, so it is underneath them. And as they move away from the Solent out towards the English Channel, the magic carpet ride increases in momentum. Add to that, they've got 20 knots behind them, and you can see that the Jennikers or the asymmetrical spinnakers are eased slightly. The poles are slightly forward. They're not running square. Here we go aboard with Laurie Smith. He's not happy. He's going up to give an inspection. Something is not happening. He wanted to put on a good show to leave England and Britain leading. This is Britain's best chance to win the Whitbread. They've had some other worthy challenges in the past, going right back to Heath's Condor, skippered by Robert Knox Johnston as he was then. But this is certainly the best. Look at the cavalry charge of the spectator boats as they're trying to keep up with these vessels doing 15 knots.
But also, look at Laurie Smith. He's right back. He could even be at the back of the pack.
Well, they're struggling. I mean, when all the other boats get their spinnakers up and harness the invisible airflow of up to 20 knots, they're able to get away quickly. The fascinating thing to me, though, was that most of the navigators I spoke to said they would prefer to start right out off the Royal Yacht Squadron, which you saw Toshiba did. Also, Merit Cup was over there as well. But it was Paul Kayard and EF Language with his tactician Steve Erickson who said, let's get away from the pack, let's not get into a bun fight. And they were furthest away from the Royal Yacht Squadron. And they have got a magnificent start. So that is EF Language out to the left. That is Paul Kayard. To the right, the white spinnaker, that is Swedish Match. What a beautiful start for Gunnar Krantz with Roger Nilsson and Earl Williams.
And to the right there, the other yellow Jenica, that is the girls, EF Education. A great start for the girls. They're the real outsiders, 66-1, but I reckon they're lying third there.
No, Toshiba out to the right would be third. They would be ahead of them now. But certainly they have started very, very well indeed. Behind them is Caverna, followed them by Merit Cup. Certainly Laurie Smith and friends are struggling a little bit. So it is Toshiba out to the right, skippered by Chris Dixon. Butte start. How are they going to weave their way through this minefield of spectator craft? They might have been orderly and disciplined at the start, but now it's just put hands over your face and hope.
Well, and also, the further back you are down that pack, the greater the risk of a problem there. That must be focusing Laurie Smith's mind. What he said to me is he wanted to get clear, the start was important, he didn't want to run aground or hit anything. That must be preoccupying him. On board now, Laurie Smith.
This is Laurie Smith standing up, but cool under pressure. He is a seasoned warrior. He's not going to start playing the black notes because things have gone badly.
Look at the size of those waves though back there. The spectator fleet really churning that up. Estimated 4,000 boats out here today.
And they're all starting to move into the same spot. This is only the second time that the Whitbread has gone west.
And this is Steve Ryder out on the water on our boat directly ahead of the fleet, and I have to say that this is one of the most extraordinary sights I've seen in any sport that we've covered anywhere in the world. An amazing sight. Howard Gibbons, the shore manager for the British entry, is right alongside, and right alongside us to our right is EF Language with this extraordinary start that's been made by Paul Kayard.
Fantastic, yeah, he got it just right actually. He came off the line with the first guy to get the spinnaker up, and they were off. Boys on Silk Cut had a bit of a problem because I think the sock in which the spinnaker is stowed to go up the mast wouldn't unzip, so they had to brought it back down again and give it a big tug and let it go. But they're off now. They're quite well set. They're on a different side of the course to this throng over here, but this is quite fantastic.
We had that clear corridor of the water at the start, but now the congestion of all the small boats and all the heavy wakes around the 10 craft racing, it's very difficult.
It's very hard, and the EF is actually burying her bow in the swell as we're speaking now, because it's just churning up the whole of the Solent. It's very hard for these guys because, you know, they want to race in flat water, and it will reduce their boat speed without a doubt. This incredible throng. Oh, there's another shark as well.
Howard, thanks. We'll try and keep up with them, but in the meantime, go back to our commentators.
So out to the left, we have the race leader, EF Language, skipper by Paul Kayard. Now right in front, in the foreground here, we have Toshiba, skipper by Chris Dixon. Both of these skippers have established great reputations in the world of America's Cup racing. This is a very, very different race. What a super start. But Kayard really has some talented sailors around him, including Joss Belski, who's sailed with him. He's just got Mark Rudiger on as a navigator recently. Magnus Olsson of Sweden is sailing in his 4th Whitbread. Well, this is the view from aboard Laurie Smith's boat, and it's a little bit galling for him, no doubt, as they really have stubbed their toe at the start. And to be tail end Charlie is not what they would have in mind, apart from their legion of supporters.
But that's the view that Laurie Smith was hoping he'd have. He'd be at the front of the fleet. Kayard there, America's Cup sailor. And interesting, actually, you've got some guys out there who are good at going around the world, but Kayard, one of those who are great at winning races, short races.
Right, let's try and picture it for you now. Right in the foreground here, the yellow spinnaker is EF Language, skippered by Paul Kayard. Out to the right, the second yacht is Toshiba, skippered by Chris Dixon. Behind that, behind Toshiba, is Swedish Match, skippered by Gunnar Krantz. A beautiful start for the dark blue hull. So they're right, this is boat is second. And you can see the fellow standing up on the deck. He's holding on to a piece of rope. Well, we call that a sheet in sailing. And they're all the time harnessing the invisible airflow. Swedish Match is third. And then comes the women's boat, which is EF Education. What a super start by the women aboard EF Education, skippered by Christine Goulot.
The women really struggled in the Fastnet race. They finished last there, and since then, really, people were thinking it was great just to get round. But from this early start, they're on the pace.
So that is EF Education out to the right with the bright yellow spinnaker. Here with our special camera aboard EF Education. This is Leah Newbold from New Zealand working on the grinders. She is one of the watch captains. She sailed on an all-women's crew last time, but she contrasts this effort, properly funded with a proper build-up, and says the women will do as well as the men. Their only limiting factor is perhaps strength in the hard running conditions of the Southern Ocean. But what a wonderful start for the women.
Went on board that boat, Leah Newbold, fantastic personality and very much the boss. She runs that ship.
So it is thumbs up from on board EF Education, no doubt about it. And they'll be sailing on confidence as they charge down the Solent, the current building up all the time, up to 2 knots. The wind still holding at 20 knots, just slightly south of east. It's an absolute maritime charge all the way down the Solent.
Smoking down there, Innovation Caverna, Knut Frostad, Marcel von Triest. Now there's an interesting one there.
So here we're now back with the second boat. This is Toshiba. So it was fascinating that they decided to start close inshore to the Isle of Wight, right out in front of the Royal Yacht Squadron. In fact, they were right on the pin at the start, right on the dot. But it was the boat furthest out, EF Language, that's been able to get ahead of them. Right behind them through the rigging, though, is Swedish Match. And one of the interesting things here that Toshiba's got to worry about is that the blue boat, Swedish Match, is shadowing them because they are right behind them. And it may sound strange, but the boat behind can impede the boat in front. So you can see Toshiba just out to the right. So here is the lead boat now. This is EF Language, skippered by Paul Kayard. These boats are absolutely fizzing down the Solent. That's 15 knots plus.
Paul Kayard stretching out that lead, pulling it away. He's got clear air. He's not being disturbed by the boats in front. He's surfing down those waves.
Notice that the spinnaker pole is just coming over towards the bow of the boat. That means they've got the pole forward. They're hotting up the angles. The breeze is coming on the side of the boat. So the wind, if you think of a clock, the wind is coming in at maybe about 22, nearly close to 1:45. And when that happens, when the wind is from 1:45 to 1/2, then that means the angle is hotter and they can sail faster on what we call a reaching angle in sailing.
Paul Kayard has also got a great crew, apart from their repertoire. Great experience there, but great atmosphere as well.
Tell me, Johnny, relate to what, sorry? So EF Language has got a very, very good lead here. They have capitalized. Initially they were out on the mainland side of the start line, but once they have all converged, because going out towards the west, past Hurst Castle, past the Needles, out to the English Channel, is different to what has happened in the past in the Whitbreads, because when they went out past Portsmouth in the past, it opened up. This is like a funnel. And as they're all converging into a tighter area, EF Education is capitalised. Now we can get the lead. EF Education in the foreground, followed then by Toshiba, followed then by Swedish Match.
But where's Laurie
EF
Smith?
Language.
Where is Laurie?
Tail end Charlie. It has not been a good start for him.
He's got clear air. He's got clear air. He could get the boat speed.
A long way out. So they're a long way in the middle of the Solent. The others have gone closer to the shore of Isle of Wight. These fellows are staying further over towards the shore, towards Lymington.
What's going to be interesting is when they go through Hurst Castle. It's very, very narrow there. All the fleet are going to bunch. I wouldn't put my money on Laurie being last.
Boy, they are moving fast. They're nearly off Yarmouth. Can you believe it?
That's unbelievable. They're going to be down at the Needles with under an hour.
Well, these conditions are absolutely tailor-made for the start. The breeze from astern.
And don't get deceived by those crew looking relaxed. They're not.
No, they'll be looking around and they'll be mindful of two things. One, what are the elements? And two, trying to make sure that they don't get into any conditions. So they're looking after their interest to harness the invisible airflow. So it is EF Language, the yellow spinnaker in front. That is Paul Kayar. Behind that is T-Shiver. So here we've got a bowman going up. He's let the pin go. It looks like is he going to make a change here? EF Language. He's up on the bow for something.
Toshiba's catching up. There's definitely getting closer there. The difference between EF and Toshiba.
Well, there may be some particular reason why Toshiba's starting to make inroads. But of course, as we've said already, the boat behind does have an advantage because they're able to shadow and steal the air that is going to the boat in front of them.
All the crew at the back of the boat. It's a downwind sleigh ride. They've got to make sure the front of the boat doesn't bury into those waves because there's really quite a chop out there.
And the reason they're doing that is saying, bring your weight aft. Let's get your weight right aft. And anybody going up onto the foredeck, the only reason they would do that is if they have to. So now they've covered down towards Yarmouth.
That's opposite Lymington. That's about 7 miles from the start.
Yes, once they get in the Yarmouth-Lymington area, that's 7 miles. Hurst Castle will be another couple of nautical miles past that. They're absolutely rattling down. This is a very, very quick exit from the Solent.
Great shot that. Leader. Paul Kayard surfing. Huge wash from the motorboats. Bow goes down into the waves. Pulling out the lead now. Toshiba further behind. They're pulling away again.
So Caverna's made a sail change, yes. There are 1 or 2 boats that are changing their asymmetrical Jenicas, or Jenicas, they're asymmetrical spinnakers. Hello, that's a ripped. It's not changing. Look, Caverna has ripped its Jenica, and there are the remnants at the top. At the top of the mast.
Well, that's a disaster, not just for this leg, but for the race, isn't it? That's 1 less sail. That's a problem for those guys. They were 3rd favourites.
Yes, well, they have started very well also. They started away at and they were lying, 4th and 5th at one stage.
Let's
got
look
a
on
very
board.
good start away from the line. But they're losing a lot of time now, so 1, they've got to get it down. They will be able to repair it on board.
But 2, they've got to put up another sail, and that's going to be the wrong sail. They're going to lose out. They're going to be struggling now.
Well, it also makes the wrong sail. What are we talking? 20 knots, and you do have 3 knots under you. So if a sail goes in those conditions, what does that tell you?
It tells you they're right on the edge. They've pushed it, and they've pushed it a bit too far.
So back now with the race leader. This is EF Language, skippered by Paul Kayard in his first Whitbread Round the World race for the Volvo Trophy.
Paul Kayard said to me, great shot there of Kayard surfing down the waves. He said, first Whitbread, he said he'd be pretty good next May. Looks like he's got the hang of it right now.
He's doing very well, but it's still a long, long way to go. So we can see now that we've got EF Language in the middle. To the right is Toshiba. The white spinnaker behind that is Swedish Match. My word, Gunnar Krantz with Roger Nilsson and Earl Williams have got off to a beaut start. Out to the left, that is EF Education. Well, we have heard that Caverna's plight is a problem of missing a boat, and that they had to lurch or luff or change direction abruptly to avoid a collision, and the end result?
Disaster. Well, it's inevitable though, Peter, out here. There's so many boats, something was going to happen. I feel desperately sorry for the guys on board, but let's hope that's the only incident.
Well, there'll be at least 4,000 spectator craft out here on the Solent.
I reckon that's about 200 metres between EF with the yellow spinnaker and Toshiba behind with the white spinnaker. Still very close. But remember, all the fleet is going to bottleneck through Hurst Castle. We may well see some place changing in there, and that's where the tide will be ripping through. A bit like the bath going out the bath plug, really. It shoots out through there, and it's very bumpy through there too.
Yes, the current is building all the time. This is Merit Cup, skippered by Grant Dalton, with some very experienced sailors on board, sailing for the Monaco Yacht Club. So here we go with our special camera aboard Merit Cup. This is Grant Dalton. They're cool under pressure. The key thing for them is really to get away from this chaos and mayhem on the water safely. Because already with the incident with Caverna, there could be more of the same for the boats, and the skippers and the afterguard will know that. Yes, try and lead the race out past the Needles onto the English Channel, but make sure you're away cleanly. It is EF Language out to the left. It is Toshiba out to the right. They are the first two yachts.
Reckon it's 20 minutes, in my judgment, till the bottleneck at Hurst Castle. And that's where we're really going to find who's where. But one thing's for certain, Kayard winning, Toshiba second.
Yeah, it certainly is a very, very quick exit here.
Just see the purple spinnaker there of Laurie Smith the other side. He's not right at the back, he's got in front of someone, but the fleet really spread out now.
It's also interesting to see that the leaders have preferred to come in closer and stay closer to Yarmouth on the Isle of Wight side, whereas Laurie Smith and his team are preferring to be further out in the Solent over towards Lymington.
We never dreamt it would be this quick. The wind's dead behind, the tide is under them, everything's pushing them out of the Solent and into the open sea.
Everything is absolutely ideal for a spectacular send-off. The thousands of people who are around the headlands, along the shore, out on the water will remember this day. Certainly the Solent and the whole area is vibrant.
It's vibrant, but it can't keep up with this pace, can it?
Well, the sailors will. They'll have to keep on with this relentless pace all the way. That is the big contrast between the early Whitbreads and this latest one. This is Grand Prix racing. They never sleep.
And that's a Grand Prix shot, isn't it? EF Language surfing downwind. See the guys on board. That guy holding that rope there, that's what we call the sheet, adjusting the sail, pulling the power in, and as they get a gust, you see the whole boat lean over.
So all the time, the man there who is standing up, he's holding what we sailors call a sheet, as opposed to, it really is a rope, and all the time he'll be saying, stand by, here's a puff, and he'll either ease in and out all the time, and we can see Paul Kayard with the dark sunglasses, he's listening to that, and what the helmsman is trying to do is steer the smoothest and easiest way through. So it is really a ballet dance out on the water as they're heading 15, 16 to knots. Johnny, we are watching the monitor all
surfing down now, the bow goes in the way, 15, 16, 17 knots even, Grand Prix sailing this at the best. Just calm down there for a minute, wait for the gust. It is quite gusty out here, but they'll be pleased. They're in front, they've got clear air, they're not disturbed. Look at Kayard there, working with that wheel, throwing it about, moving the boat from left to right, finding the best track. You can see the determination on that guy's face. A lot of activity there at the back of that boat. Kayard's passed over the helm to someone else, didn't quite see that there, obviously got something to do. Watch that boat, there's going to be a change. So, Kayard in the lead.
Kayard talking with Mark Rudiger, the navigator, a very, very good navigator for sailing round the buoys in America's Cup racing or day racing. And he was right alongside, and he's one of the key factors why they've got to start.
I bet he'd like Toshiba to go away, but they won't. Chris Dixon at the helm, 200 metres behind, sticking to him like glue. So further up the Solent, the crowd expectantly looking back, looking through binoculars. They can just see the fleet. You don't get the impression of speed from there, but a few minutes' time they certainly will. And what a spectacular sight that is. The boats, the Armada, as they head out to sea for the start of the 1997 Whitbread Round the World race for the Volvo Trophy.
Well, how the environment will change for the people sitting in a tranquil picnic setting out of Fort Victoria. Just a few folks around, enjoying each other's company, but very soon they will have the whole cavalry charge of this. The start of the Whitbread go down, and an armada of spectator craft trying to keep up with the leading yachts.
You get some idea from these small ribs surfing down the waves at quite the speed they're doing. On board with the leader.
So Paul Kayard still on the helm, he's out to the right with the dark glasses. Mark Rudiger out to the left as the navigator.
Leading boat, EF Language, Paul Kayard, second, Toshiba, Chris Dixon. But that's the girls you can see with the yellow spinnaker. They're still going fast, still on the pace.
So this is the race leader as they're closing down now towards Hurst Castle. Toshiba out to the right, Swedish match.
Right the other side of the screen there is Laurie Smith, the purple spinnaker. Just see it right the far side. So he's pulling up, I think.
In the middle, it's Brunel Synergy also is in the middle, the Dutch boat.
Silk Cut, I would say, is sixth, seventh, eighth. He's certainly in there. They've got pace, they've got clear wind, and they've got good tide where they are.
Well, that is one of the key factors. By going further out into the Solent, at least they've got clear water. It's an absolute stampede, as the water is very badly broken now with all the spectator craft, making life a little bit difficult. Although there is quite a few spectators around, but not as many as with the leaders. That is EF Language, Toshiba and Swedish Match.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think Laurie Smith is like bees to the honeypot there. The motorboat's sticking round him. Neil MacDonald there in the front of the picture, holding the sheet, and those grinders. Adrian Stead there on the left, Worldboat small boat sailor from the UK. And they're looking forward, some distance forward to the leaders, and Paul Kayard and Toshiba. Difficult to say how far behind they are.
Well, they've still got some distance to go as we look across on the angle there, but we will get a much better idea as they close into the funnel, which is off Hurst Castle. A very narrow area of water, and they will all have to converge on that.
These boats keeping up this relentless pace, day and night.
So this is boat number 2 and 4, that is Toshiba, and it's EF Education. The women's entry scripted by Christine Gallo. In behind is Chessie Racing. They've done very well also behind EF Language. So this is Paul Kayard, and behind that is Chessie Racing. Now Chessie Racing is skippered by Mark Fisher and has some very, very good sailors on.
Just as you're speaking there, Peter, diving in the middle, Swedish Match, Gunnar Krantz. That's the best financed entry here, around about £10 million, I believe. Great looking boat, that dark blue, very, very smart, sort of thing you'd expect to find in Saint-Tropez.
They certainly have got plenty of style about them as they're on their way out, and behind that is Chessie Racing, which is a private entry from the Chesapeake Bay area near Baltimore in the United States.
Look at the guys at the wheel there of Swedish Match. They're looking at the waves also, trying to find the best track. The waves can be used as an advantage to push the boats forward. Remember, you've got tide, wind as well.
There are a lot of things to consider here, but many more issues than just the elements the sailors normally have to consider. Out to the right is the race leader. That is EF Language, skippered by Paul Kayard. Out to the right even further is Toshiba, skippered by Chris Dixon. Come back in, and the white Jenica or asymmetrical spinnaker, that is Swedish Match. Behind that is EF Education, skippered by Christine Gillow. Now out to the left of Swedish Match and EF Education is Chessie Racing, skippered by Mark. He's doing a super job there. Now out to the red spinnaker is America's Challenge, skippered by Ross Field. We can see Brunel Synergy over there as well.
But right on the left-hand side, we can see Laurie Smith. Now, we know the leaders are on the right, but I wouldn't hazard a guess at where those guys on the left are, what position they are. They're mid-fleet.
I don't think they'll be in the first 6 as we go through the checkpoint at Hurst Castle. Right, well this is America's Challenge. This is an effort out of California, started by Neil Barth. It was the first boat entered for this year's Whitbread, but the last to finally arrive into the assembly point in Southampton.
Now, if I was on those jet skis, I think I'd get out of the way there.
It would be a very good idea, very prudent indeed. No medals for being famous, getting in the path of this armada of boats. Yeah. What an exit from the Solent out onto the English Channel.
And this downwind sleigh ride still headed by Paul Kayard, 6 times world champion, America's Cup sailor, and Whitbread Virgin. He's still ahead.
This is Merit Cup, skippered by Grant Dalton. So they're currently about 6th at this stage. They'll be taking it quite cautiously now to make sure that they get a safe exit out of the Solent onto the English Channel.
In early August, Merit Cup was in the Fastnet. They didn't have a great start in that Fastnet, but they had a great finish.
Well, they won it in the end. So now we can see EF Language come back to Toshiba. Their Swedish match. The red spinnaker here is America's Challenge, skippered by Ross Field. Well, it's very interesting that we see Merit Cup, skippered by Grant Dalton, with Mike Quilter, the navigator. They have preferred to stay further out in the Solent.
Well, it's like I thought. I think Hurst Castle's going to be the point where they're going to get together. We may well see some place changing there. It's not as simple as it looks, you know.
No, it's not. And based on what we've been able to see on the charge along the northern shore of the Isle of Wight, down past Yarmouth, where EF Language and Toshiba were the first two, this boat could be coming into the reckoning, as indeed also could America's Challenge.
And this guy won't be feeling quite so confident. Merritt could be squeezing up on him there. Bit of activity down there. Kayard bears away. That's angles the boat down the wave. One of the crewmen winching the sail in there. So Kayard desperately keen to be first through Hurst Castle. If he can pop through there, then it's the Needles and then he's out. And they'll be going relentlessly at this speed day and night. And on board those boats, by the way, there is no sacrifice for speed. The guys have very, very little sleep. Down below, they eat just freeze-dried food, perhaps 4 hours sleep at night. It really is a huge sacrifice. It's a sacrifice that's worthwhile if you win.
So now we are coming down to the area between Hurst Castle and Fort Albert. Fort Albert on the northern shore of the Isle of Wight. Hurst Castle near Lymington on the mainland of England. So let's have a look now as the leading yachts. This is going to be fascinating. We have EF Language, Paul Kayard. Out to the right is Toshiba. But look up on the top left-hand part of the picture. That is Merit Cup.
I'd say he's ahead already. He's squeezing up.
So it's going to be fascinating that Merit Cup decided that they would stand further out on the Solent. Now, that's not what White Quilter, the navigator, told me yesterday. He said one of the key things, we perhaps should be along the northern shore. That's the place to be because the current was moving quicker from Cowes along the northern shore rather than being out in the middle.
You obviously talk to too many people, Peter.
I guess that after half an hour, the tide or current is really starting to pour and rip out. It is amazing to think that we've covered 9 nautical miles in just half an hour.
Now let's see the difference here. We've got Merit Cup and they seem to be pulling ahead. Armada behind Merit Cup, that appears to be the leader. Now the bottom right of your screen, the yellow spinnaker, that is Paul Kayard. Now I'd say that Merit Cup's in the lead. The interesting thing, if that angle works, it could work for Laurie Smith.
That's the interesting point. Anyway, we'll see once we get a handle on it, once they go through past Hurst Castle, it will certainly give us a better idea.
Middle of the picture, you can just about see Laurie Smith. He's certainly in the pack now. I wouldn't hazard a guess at his position. Another interesting point, Toshiba, right-hand side of the picture, white spinnaker.
The red spinnaker is America's Challenge, skippered by Ross Field. Toshiba is out to the right. So there is Laurie Smith, resplendent in purple with his shark's teeth, trying to gnaw down his rivals who got the jump on him.
It's
after the problems they had at the start.
The teeth? Yeah, behind the bloody death hole.
Definitely paid staying out in the middle there. Smith, for him, Kayard was miles away before, but now very much catching up. Got good momentum.
Still, the cavalry charge continues. The enthusiasm of the spectators for a magnificent British farewell.
And for Laurie Smith, Hurst Castle, he could be in the top 5.
So here we are back aboard. There's Laurie Smith crouching down. In front of him is Neil MacDonald, who lists his pastimes as ale tasting. I said to him yesterday, you'll be able to do plenty of that around the world, and he replied that he's looking forward to it. But at the moment, concentrating. So they are further out in the Solent after the indifferent start they had as a result of the halyard problems.
Just saw Brunel Sunnergy for the first time, very close to Laurie Smith. Great picture there, EF Education and EF Language in front, EF Language.
This has been a campaign put together in Sweden based on a company that's been going for 20 or 30 years with the idea of promoting communication and language.
Interesting, Laurie Smith started off helming the boat that's in the lead right now, EF Language, before a big transfer deal saw him move over.
That happened about a year ago. So back aboard the women's vessel, this is EF Education, skippered by Christine Gallo. So well and truly in control here.
Good relaxed atmosphere on board.
Now the woman out to the left is Lyneth Beckley, the navigator from South Africa. You can see in her left hand she's got a chart. So here we come back now to the race leader. This is EF Language, Paul Kayar. Behind that is Toshiba, Chris Dixon. Behind that, the white Jenica or asymmetrical spinnaker. That is Swedish Match. And behind that is EF Education, Christine Gullo.
The leader there, Kayard, Spinnaker. Look, there's not so much wind there, almost overtaking the wind.
Well, because they're in the shadow of the land here. And so the fresher breeze that they had of 20 knots out of the Royal Yacht Squadron has eased a bit. They'll be down to 10 to 12 knots at the moment.
Still got that tide under them, and all the time it's pushing them more and more out of the Solent. Definitely tighter up now between there and Toshiba.
And also Toshiba, as the boat behind, is starting to shadow the boat in front. Now we can see the red Jenica or Spinnaker, America's Challenge, further out, and behind that is the British entry with Laurie Smith. So they're a long way out to the left.
This is the race for the lead. Close in here on EF Language, Paul Kayard. You can see the boat in the distance is Merit Cup, Grant Dalton. It's very, very close. If anything, Merit is gaining. EF Language is giving nothing away there, surfing down those waves, smoking downwind.
Well, while it's very much a public exit today, and the eyes of the world are on the crews as they are working hard to leave the Solent and head out to the English Channel, once they're out in the solitary area of the North Atlantic, they'll still be trying just as hard as they are here now.
Toshiba now to the left of Kayard. If anything, they're going quicker. Kayard slowing down. He's nearer the land. The land may be stopping the wind getting to his sails, making him go slower.
Which is a very interesting point. If you look further out, we can see America's Challenge, even Laurie Smith and friends.
The wind's definitely dying.
They have got more breeze out in the Solent, where those closest to the northern shore of the Isle of Wight have not quite the same puff. So here is Merit Cup, and the red Spinnaker is America's Challenge, skippered by Ross Field.
On board now with Merit Cup, could well be the leaders. They've still got good wind out there. They're still powering down there. Remember, last time we looked at EF Language, they were really struggling. The wind was really light inshore, but these guys are surfing downwind now, using every ounce, playing the waves, playing the wind, and the tide pushing them through. Much slower here, look at this. Wind's much, much lighter here. Kayard's slower, agonising that.
So we're coming down, approaching Hurst Castle now, and Fort Albert.
Kayard's in very light winds. Really, really slowed down. Great view that of the whole fleet coming down.
Who was beheaded at Hurst Castle? Was it Charles I? Or held as prisoner?
ferry going across
So
there.
yes, commerce does not stop here in the Solent.
That's a great view, isn't it? From
As
up
the
there.
right link goes straight across to Yarmouth. As these boats are on the charge down to Hurst Castle, a very famous landmark here in England. Charles I built Hurst Castle. Toshiba hotting up the angle a little bit. Got a little bit more puff there, hasn't it?
It has, squeezing up there, just in front of the girls' boat, and can't quite see. Look at Toshiba's bearing away now, but there's definitely less wind up there, Peter.
Well, it's easy to contrast the spinnakers now and see the weight of breeze and how taut they are now in contrast to what we saw at the start.
It's a very different game now. Look at that spinnaker, the wind just fading away, the whole thing collapsing, and if it's collapsing, that means the boat's going slower. But remember, the boats in the middle have got big breeze.
The breeze spilling out of EF Education's spinnaker. The idea is to keep it full all the time.
Merrick Cup is in the middle. That will be going quicker. Nearest to us on the right-hand side of the picture, that was EF Language, but here we are on board.
Well, there's Grant Dalton on the handlebars here. He skippered New Zealand Endeavour to the fastest elapsed time around the world in the last Whitbread to win the maxi class.
And there it is. He's in the lead, and there's that picture again. Look at that. Still, EF Language has got more breeze now. I think they've got through that. Perhaps it was a hill or something. Something's stopping the wind going through, but they've got better breeze.
It's a question of the angles that we're looking at, but remember all the time, the current, the tide going out is building all the time. It was half a knot at the start off the Royal Yacht Squadron. By the time they get to Hurst Castle, we'll have overfall. It'll be 3 to 3.5 knots.
And if you're in the middle, it'll be going quicker, and that's going to favour Merrick Cup. Looking across, he's seeing where he is. He must be feeling pretty comfortable right now. Another look across, he can see Toshiba, and he can see the yellow spinnaker of Paul Kayard, the man who shot away from the start. They've been going now for 45 minutes, but just remember, 31,600 mile race, 9 months, but next stop, Cape Town.
Yes, that will take the best part of a month. In the first 4 Whitbreads, they went to Cape Town directly across the equator and bashed their way for 3,000 nautical miles directly into the wind. This time they're taking a wide arc around a couple of waypoints over towards Brazil. But they won't be thinking about Brazil at the moment. The key thing here is to get away from the Solent and out past the Needles.
Look at that EF
and
Language.
The English Channel.
Tight in there, marvellous shot, slicing through those waves. Still a big sea, and that sea's going to get bigger and more confused at Hurst Castle. As the tide squeezes through a very narrow gap, it's very bumpy down there.
Yes, it's rather like a funnel.
On board now, Grant Dalton.
Just in front of him is Mike Quilter, navigator aboard Merrick Cup, who was the winning navigator aboard New Zealand Endeavour in the last race, and in the 89-90 race he was the winning navigator for Peter Blake aboard Steinlager 2.
And a man who I'd hazard a guess to say is the best paid and most respected navigator in this race.
Certainly a lot of experience and cool under pressure, is able to think through the myriad of problems that navigators are faced with, although the issues here are very different to being in the mid-Atlantic and working your way around a high.
Back with EF Language and Paul Kayard. It's still neck and neck between these two. This really is Grand Prix sailboat racing, and they're going to race like this round the world. It's not going to stop.
Absolutely. Day and night, relentless. Dinghy racing all the way around the world, and that to me has been the key change that I've noticed having watched all 7 Whitbreads, from the Adventures and Misfits, from the very first race in big, heavy, clunky boats. Here now these are stripped out Grand Prix machines that they will push hard for every minute they're at sea.
EF Language, Merrick Cup powering down through the waves. Merrick Cup, if anything, squeezing through, pulling away. But little surge, you see that? EF Language gets a surge, Merrick Cup gets a surge.
So this is Paul Kayard. Mark Rudiger, his navigator to his right, and his trusted confidant, Steve Erickson, who he sailed in with so many regattas and won so many world championships in smaller boats, just in front of him. They're all from the San Francisco Bay Area. So although this is a Swedish campaign, the hired guns, sailing's rock stars from San Francisco Bay Area.
EF Education and Language, both boats trained with each other, the boys and the girls, and for training they had 6 boys and 6 girls on each boat. Good, extensive training, and Kayard reckons he's done the most sail development of anyone in the fleet.
So it is EF Language, Paul Kayard, the leader out to the left, Toshiba out to the right second, and in the middle we can see Merit Cup Grant Dalton, definitely right in the picture, and benefited from being further out in the Solent.
There's Laurie, Purple Jenica, back in the pack. Where would you say, 7th? He's right out there, he's got the best benefit of the tide pushing him through.
Well, I'm fascinated. He's starting to reel them in. He has got Brunel Synergy, the Dutch boat, just in front of him, and just in front of that was America's Challenge. The fascinating thing to me was that Swedish Match, that was right up in the leading bunch, has slipped a cog and is really not very far in front of Laurie Smith and friends. This is Stuart Ballantyne there, winching in a former world youth laser champion.
Smith, right at the back of the fleet, actually, we reckon now. That was 6th, 7th, bit optimistic there. He's chasing Brunel Synergy, that's the yellow boat in front of him. Swedish Match is the blue boat with the white spinnaker, and the red spinnaker there, America's Challenge. A lot of these guys on board with Laurie started with EF. When he went, they went with him. He's got unquestioning loyalty with those guys.
So this all happened really because of the problems they had with the halyard soon after the start. The halyard is the piece of equipment that hoists the spinnaker up.
Quite simply, they didn't have enough sail up early enough.
And the reasons why don't matter.
Oh, well, that's history now, Peter. They've got to focus on the race.
Yeah, well, if you haven't got any socks, you can't pull them up. So if you haven't got your spinnaker up, you can't harness the air.
Well, these guys will be pleased. It'll be good to have Laurie Smith behind them. They're cracking down now towards Hurst Castle. Toshiba on the left there, white spinnaker. You can see the Toshiba word. You can see it's getting bumpier now, the tide's starting to rip, and here we are with Kayard, still in the lead, or is he?
That's Mark Rudiger, pointing there. He's got binoculars. He's talking all the time because they're coming down to a very interesting path of the exit from the Solent out onto the English Channel, past Hurst Castle.
And he's ahead. EF Language is ahead. Merit Cup is second. Well, that'll be a relief for the guys on board, but great credit to Grant Dalton there. He came from nowhere.
Well, Merit Cup took the path to stay further out in the Solent, whereas EF Language, Paul Kayard with Mark Rudiger as navigator and Steve Erickson with a lot of input decided, the boys from San Francisco Bay who know a lot about current there and have raced here in the Admiral's Cup a lot, decided they would stay closer in along the northern shore of the Isle of Wight. So here we're coming up for a sail change, getting ready, as we've got men on the foredeck now.
Now, as we saw with Laurie, you want to get this one right. Get it wrong, you could lose 4 or 5 places. Don't get the sail up fast enough. You haven't got enough sail up. Everyone's got more cloth up, and that's more cloth to catch the wind, so they'll go quicker. Also, they're going to be coming here through very bumpy water. They want the power on. They want the accelerator on the foot to the floor.
So they're probably going to go to a different weight, slightly stronger. Merit Cup not too far behind. Notice how Merit Cup has converged down. We're emphasizing again that leaving the Solent and going west towards the English Channel, it funnels out that way, so it gets very tight indeed, as opposed to going east past Portsmouth where it expands out.
Sail change very much like going to the pits in racing, in motor racing, but in here obviously you can't go to the pits, you've got to do it on the go. Do you stay ahead with the wrong sail? No, you don't. You put the right sail up, but you do it and try and stay ahead of the fleet. That's exactly what they're doing on Language.
So this is the gap. It is Hurst Castle out to the left, built by Charles I, one of the great landmarks on the south of England. First, we've got the ferry, in the cross-channel ferry, full of spectators. What a magnificent view they've had. And it's going to be fascinating because we can see it is EF Language, Paul Kayar, behind that is Merritt Cup, but look, Toshiba's going to be in the act. It looks like Chessie Racing, followed then by EF Education. They are the leading 5. Then we go back to the next group that includes Laurie Smith and friends. It does have Swedish Match, interestingly, the white spinnaker in front of Laurie Smith. We have here America's Challenge and also a Brunel Synergy behind.
EF Language, Kayard is ahead.
So it's getting tight now and converging in. But the enthusiasm and the farewell from the people of England is absolutely spectacular here. This maritime charge all the way down the Solent. They've covered 9 miles, nearly 10 miles now, and the enthusiasm is not waning. So they go between Hurst Castle and Fort Albert.
And then out
so it
towards
is
the
Hurst
Eagles.
Castle out to the right, Fort Albert out to the left. So you can see how it tightens right down, and then beyond that we have Christchurch Bay, and out to the left the magnificent headland of the Needles, and beyond that the English Channel, and beyond that the deep blue sea of the 7th Whitbread Round the World Yacht Race. So the slingshot start continues. It's a stampede, and this really requires intense concentration. Helicopters chattering above, launches and fizz boats all around, people alongside the crews waving their last farewells. What a wonderful start by the women aboard EF Education.
Well, they've done 10 miles
Christine
pretty
Galou's
well.
done a super job.
10 miles pretty well. They've got 7,340 to go, so they've got to keep this pace up. Leah Newbold there, one of the watch leaders on the grinder.
So back aboard with our special camera with EF Education.
Laurie Smith in the background, you can see the purple Jenica as those 2 girls. Now strength's going to be an issue on that boat, but the girls ahead of Smith, they'll be chuffed with that.
So that's Anna Droog there, this is Laurie Smith.
See our onboard cameraman there bringing you these quite spectacular shots. More people in more countries than ever before are going to see this coverage.
The boat just in front of them, off the starboard bow of Laurie Smith and friends, is America's Challenge, skippered by Rossfield. Laurie Smith, Neil McDonald to his left, they're all cool under pressure.
So's Gordon Maguire at the helm. Those 3, the real key players on that boat.
The important thing in sailing is if things don't go right all the time, and often they don't, stay cool under pressure to grind back in and reel back your rivals. And you do that by concentrating hard. So it is EF Language, the leader, followed then by Merritt Cup and Toshiba. So it's Paul Kayard, Grant Dalton and Chris Dixon.
But Kayard's pulled out more of a lead, and Dalton and Dixon are close. That's going to please Kayard. Dalton and Dixon, they're the boats in 2nd and 3rd, could start interfering with each other and getting close, and that will slow them down, and that will give Kayard the chance to pull away, and that's what he's doing now.
Now, the fellow pointing right now is Steve Eriksson, Olympic gold medalist, 6-time world champion. Behind him, Mark Rudiger. And Paul Kayard will have probably said very little over the last 10 or 15 minutes. Eriksson and Rudiger are absolute rock stars, and they'll be giving an awful lot of input to Kayard. So it's starting now to become a soldier's course as they go past the famous landmark of Hurst Castle. It is EF Language, Paul Kayard in front. What a spectacular view from Port Albert.
Biggest crowds ever, I think, for a Whitbread start. Perfect conditions.
Notice how the spinnakers now have been eased forward. There's more pressure in the wind. The angles are starting to hot up. They're getting more weight in the breeze than they had 5-10 minutes ago.
British boat, Laurie Smith. He's in the pack now, but he's at the back of the pack. Great view that from the fleet. On the left there, Merritt Cup, they're in 2nd. Third, Toshiba. And about 8th, Laurie Smith. But he's very much in the pack, done well there. Toshiba third. You've got the whole fleet there. On the left, EF Language, but you can still, they're very, very close. And this is how we expect them to stay as they go around the world. This is going to be a very close race.
Absolutely. This is how I'd expect them to be racing all the time. We might say, though, folks, they won't have all of the crew on deck all of the time. They will split into watch systems within the next couple of hours, and so you'll have 5 on deck. So it's EF Language first, Merit Cup second, Toshiba third. So it's EF Language skippered by Paul Kayard, Merit Cup skippered by Grant Dalton, Toshiba Chris Dixon, Chessie Racing, Mark Fisher, what a wonderful start. And EF Education skippered by Christine Gallo.
Swedish match in 6th, Gunnar Krantz. In 7th, Brunel Synergy, Hans Buchholz. In 8th, Rossfield, America's Challenge. In 9th, it's the British, Laurie Smith. And right at the back, remember they had that trouble with their sail and their spinnaker. They start at the front, but Innovation Caverna, they're at the back of the fleet, desperately disappointing that. So after 15 miles racing, that's the position.
And it really emphasises the problems that Laurie Smith had, and also aboard Caverna, if you sneeze, you lose a place.
Yeah, and that's going to be like that all the way around the world. They've got to keep up the level of intensity all the time. So that gives you a view there of 1st and 2nd, EF Language and Merit Cup.
Notice how the angles are hotting up though. See, they've got their poles forward, going forward on the stay, and the boats are leading over more. They're getting more weight on the breeze. So as they've gone past Hurst Castle and out onto Christchurch Bay towards the Needles, out towards the English Channel, fresher breeze.
On the right there, yellow spinnaker. The girls are struggling slightly. They've lost a couple of places.
It is Hurst Castle in the background, built by Charles I.
So first,
a major tourist attraction here on the south coast of England.
First EF Language, 2nd Merit Cup, 3rd Toshiba.
So going from Toshiba to Chessie Racing. It's been a very good start for Chessie Racing. They are 4th. So we have Toshiba here to the left, that is 3rd, Chris Dixon. This is Chessie Racing to the left. In the middle we have EF Education, Christine Gallo. Out to the right, Swedish Match. There's an absolute army of fans here from all over Europe supporting Swedish Match. Again, Merit Cup had a lot of friends and clients. All of the supporters wearing clothing supporting the various crews.
And all those supporters, we're thinking of these guys tonight. There's a forecast for big winds and lumpy seas out there. There'll be no armada, no spectators, just speed, power, the race, and a little loneliness.
That's an interesting point that brings up the contrast, doesn't it? Because here, this is an absolute stampede where they really are prime time and the focus on the world as they exit the Solent at the start of this great odyssey. But within a couple of hours, there will be just the crews on their boats and looking across the expanse of water at arrival.
Spare a thought for them when you tuck into your bed tonight and pull the duvet over you. These guys won't be. They'll be doing exactly this in the cold. Gordon Maguire at the helm there. Laurie Smith in 8th. Closest to us, Laurie Smith. Expression never changes, does it, Peter? Winning or losing, Laurie's the same.
Cool under pressure. There's mind going over. There's so many things to concentrate on and contemplate.
Something happening here on Toshiba. Looks like a sail change. The boat's turning here, a bit of an angle. Perhaps they're going to take that spinnaker down. Certainly, yeah, they are. That's definitely a sail change there on Toshiba. Now, will the others follow? They've got to get this right, remember. Pulling it down on deck. That's a monster. You let that go, and it takes control of you. It can pull you out of the boat. But as you'd expect from these guys, some of the finest sailing athletes in the world, they've done that. perfectly. We'll give them 10 out of 10 for that. In 8th position, Laurie Smith. Very distinctive purple Jenica, purple mainsail. It looks tranquil from that angle. When we get close, it looks anything but. But a beautiful scene that as the fleet head out for this 7,350-mile leg down to Cape Town.
Which is one of 9. There are 9 legs in this race. In the last race there were 6, but as a change they have decided to have 3 more ports, introducing special sprint legs in various parts of the world, and rather than total elapsed time, they've changed the way the race will be won.
That's right, it's point system now, so you're first in, you get the best points, and that means that there's no advantage in finishing 2 weeks ahead. You just need to be 2 minutes ahead, and that will change the way they approach the race.
In the 1989-90 race, we noticed that aboard Steinlager 2, Peter Blake and Mike Quilter made a big decision out of Spain and Portugal and went west, got a huge lead, and ended up in Punta del Este, Uruguay, 18 hours in front of the nearest rival, and defended for the rest of the race. But having a big lead like that on any leg really doesn't matter.
Well, Steve Hales said to me, and he's navigator with Laurie Smith, being out in front is a bit frightening, because the whole pack can go a different way, different weather system. He wants to stay at the front, of course, but with the pack, he wants them close to him. So looking back here from the Needles as the fleet and the armada of spectator boats approach. Less spectator boats, some have turned around, some just can't keep up with the pace.
Well, this view is one of the most spectacular in England. It is from the top of the Needles, at the western entrance to the Solent, coming in off the English Channel. But it's made even more so today. This is the Needles out to the right. Absolutely majestic headland.
And when they pop past that, they're likely to get a bit more wind. No shelter from the Isle of Wight.
And still an armada of spectator fleet following the 10 boats in the 7th Whitbread.
Merrick Cup, Grant Dalton, 2nd position, working hard, they're on the chase. They're through the confused waters there, but looking back through the fleet. 2nd, Toshiba. On the right there with the white spinnaker, that's Swedish match. And to the right of them, the yellow, that's the girls' EF team.
So life is becoming a little bit easier for the crews, particularly the afterguard, the decision makers on where to go, and more importantly, who to dodge as they had to through that maritime dodgem race coming away from the Royal Yacht Squadron.
Well, you've called it dodgems. Laurie Smith has just popped out a picture there, but he's going from the left-hand side, as we see it, right over to the right.
So this is the 2nd yacht past Hurst Castle. This is Merritt Cup, skippered by Grant Dalton.
Looking anxiously over their shoulders there.
Grant Dalton still on the helm. He sailed in his first race in 1981-82 aboard a yacht called Flyer, skippered by Cornelius van Rietschoten, the only man to have skippered 2 yachts to victory. Look at the thousands of people all around Hurst Castle in the background that have come from Lymington and all other areas. It's a magnificent building, Hurst Castle, and a real tourist attraction in the south part of England.
But Laurie Smith won't be caring about that. Now the women's crew, they're doing well. They're in the middle of the pack. That's a surprise to most people, that yellow spinnaker, easy to identify. Now those girls, they actually they asked the organisers if they could take 2 more people on board. They've got 12 girls on that. And they said, well, we're not as strong as everyone else. Can we have 2 more? Organisers said no. So girls v boys, it's all about equal footing, isn't it?
That's the only thing they acknowledge. They know that they're good sailors and they're as bright as their male counterparts, but they do acknowledge that particularly in the heavier grunt work, they will need maybe 2 women to pull in a sail, whereas 1 strong man could do it. And that's really the only limiting factor for the women. There have been all women's crews in past Whitbreads, including Tracy Edwards sailing maiden back in the 89-90 race.
And of course the first woman, Claire Francis.
Now a very famous author, but she did not have an all-women crew in the 1977-78 race. She had a mixed crew, or as the Americans persist in saying, a co-ed crew.
Well, they've had co-ed on the EF. They've been training that way, as we were saying earlier. EF chasing not a wind. You see the boats leaning over now,
yes,
more pressure.
Well, now they're getting out into Christchurch Bay, getting into clearer air, because going past Yarmouth, they were under the sheltered area. And that is why there has been sail changes, that the crews are looking ahead, the afterguard, and trying to
Hey, sorry, look at this. Look at the lead he's pulled
go
out there,
through
EF
the various
Language.
factors that they have, are trying to think ahead, and one of those was that the breeze will increase, and therefore it's time to change.
EF Language there, Peter, has really pulled out quite a lead. I mean, just 10 minutes ago it was neck and neck, and now that must be, what, 400 or 500 metres?
Well, that was one of the factors in terms of getting clear air, getting into clear water, because the boat's trailing behind, remember, you have got an awful lot of bad wash coming off the spectator boats. So there is a big incentive to be first as you make your exit to the English Channel.
Well, they're just about to do that. EF Language had a bad fast net. A lot of people thought they weren't on the pace, but
Embroiled in a controversy earlier this week when Nick White, a New Zealander who was navigator aboard Yamaha, the winning yacht 4 years ago, left this campaign at the end of the fast net. There were a short, curt exchange regarding the navigation arrangements, and the man on the helm here, Paul Card, not happy with Nick White. Nick White resigned, and then he said he wanted to join America's Challenge. And the campaign here of EF Language played the black notes and said that they were not impressed and didn't think that was cricket. And so Nick White is still on the beach and has not sailed with America's Challenge. One of the interesting things is also that 5 yachts are going with 11 crew and 5 are going with 12. A very interesting philosophical point of view.
So looking back towards the Needles there, and the fleets pop out into big seas, and the start of the voyage, really, the start of the race, the start of the Grand Prix. But right now, Kayard's in pole position.
What a magnificent headland. It has been a welcome sight for thousands of sailors, right from the time of Drake and Nelson, to come back into the English Channel, whether they're going to Southampton or Portsmouth, to see those white cliffs of the Needles. But for these fellows, it's farewell to this famous, famous headland, and not really time for sightseeing.
On EF Language, it looks like a sail change. Now this is going to be relentless, this pace of changing sails. It goes on 24 hours a day. Huge pressure for these guys. One story I heard this morning, last year's campaign, Chris Dixon asked someone to go to the top of the mast. It's blowing 60 knots, he asked for a volunteer, he got 11. Nice sail change that. Wait for that one to fill with wind, they'll take the other sail down. Can't see what the one is they've put up there, Peter. What do you think? The more wind they're expecting now?
I'm sure that is the case, that once they've got out into the clear air and the stronger forecast, that they're all thinking ahead. It's not a question of what you got now. Sailors are thinking ahead, 1 minute ahead and 10 minutes ahead. Always looking at the horizon, always looking at the sky.
They'll want to get that big yellow spinnaker down, which they are. That will be slowing them up. That's literally like drag a parachute out the back of the boat, slowing them down there.
But now we can see the long arms of the crew as they're reeling it in. And that was the point the women made on the other campaign, that often they don't quite have the physical grunt to get these huge sails in. The sail coming down could cover the area of a normal-sized house. Really, it does take an awful lot of sail area, and physically it is very demanding.
So EF Language, Paul Cayard in the lead. Second, Merritt Cup, Grant Dalton. In third, Toshiba, Chris Dixon. And following, Chessie Racing and Swedish Match with Gunnar Kratz. So as they pass the Needles, it's taken them about an hour to get down there. They've been travelling, haven't they?
It's been a very swift exit. The combination of the outgoing tide up to 3.5 knots by the time they got to Hurst Castle, and the very strong breeze coming from the east or from astern has meant a swift exit.
Good sail change. Now they've got open sea. I don't think there'll be much change in direction. I think they'll stay as a pack. Do you agree?
Well, I think the key thing here is to get clear from Christchurch Bay, past the Needles. So this is Chessie Racing. What a super job they've done, as they were fourth past Hurst Castle. Mark Fisher is on the helm. This project was put together by by George Collins, a prominent sailor from Baltimore and the Chesapeake Bay area, but he has elected not to sail, so they have some very good sailors here.
Anything, that boat looks overpowered. That big spinnaker there pulling the boat forward. It looks ungainly, doesn't it, making its way down there? They've got too much sail up, haven't they?
Well, that's the key factor, really. And it's a constantly changing move all the time. To harness the invisible airflow, the ragged, jagged headland of the Needles just down in the foreground, the cruise ship setting the pace out onto the English Channel. And really, that is a big armada of spectator craft who have gone past Hurst Castle, out onto Christchurch Bay, and what's clear of the Needles, out onto the English Channel. Many of those spectators full of supporters, friends and family. And this now, of course, becomes the interesting transition from the hype and build-up over the last week, all the media attention, and then the absolute stampede, 4,000 spectator craft, helicopters above, thousands of people lining all the headlands. Now the key issue is, within an hour, they'll be solitary and silent.
And tonight they'll be racing this hard, completely by themselves, and only the fleet to look at.
Well, that's the key ingredient, to get into the race groove quickly, get into their watch systems quickly. Some can handle it better than others. What a magnificent backdrop the Needles is.
No. So 4 weeks at sea on their way down to Cape Town. A long time. They'll be racing so intensely all the time. They have got the ability to communicate with back home, but there won't be much time for that. You're not allowed a book on board, you're not allowed a Walkman, one pair of shoes. This is Grand Prix racing, make no mistake about that.
We should say you're not allowed, not from the race officials, you can take whatever you want. It is the skippers won't allow it because of saving weight.
Well, Chris Dixon raised the game last time, didn't he, like that? And all the other skippers followed. They thought, we'll have a bit of that. We don't want the weight.
He makes you share a toothbrush, which is quite a lot of bonding, isn't it?
Well, he makes you cut it in half, actually, Peter, so I think that sums up, really. When you're cutting your toothbrush in half, weight matters.
Well, one of the interesting aspects that they have is that some are sailing with 11. This crew, Toshiba, is sailing with 11. Some are sailing with 12. Now, for Toshiba and Merit Cup and the others who have gone with 11, weight counts. Whereas some of them, like Laurie Smith, is taking 12. So he doesn't stand a watch, and therefore there are floaters, the navigator and the skipper. Others, the skippers take the watch.
Well, with 11 people, you'll be working harder, and that's pretty relevant. For those of us who've been on a ferry and down in that Bay of Biscay area, that can be pretty lumpy on a car ferry. These guys will be there tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the important factor is also that how hard they work. In the last race, a yacht called Winston, skipper by Brad Butterworth, went with 10, and that proved to be not enough. So with only 11, though, you are working hard, and that's the philosophical point. Should you have 12 and maybe be a little bit more efficient?
Now the race is on for second place. Toshiba and Merit Cup. Remember, Merit was chasing for the lead, and now Toshiba. Different sail combination there. Toshiba's got more sail up, and he's going faster. So Toshiba, Chris Dixon in second. No one will be surprised about that. Two great Kiwi rivals there. Chris Dixon, Grant Dalton.
I don't know whether they'll be waving to each other, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Certainly they're very, very intense rivals. Dixon, an outstanding sailor in small boats, having won 3 World Match Racing Championships and a raft of other championships, has been attracted by the Whitbread. Last time he had his yacht Tokyo in a comfortable advantage out off the coast of Brazil. He broke his mast, and that was the end of his chances of winning the 6th Whitbread. So here he is in the 7th Whitbread, hoping to do something he couldn't 4 years ago, and he started well.
So on the left, those two together, Toshiba and Merit Cup, fighting it out as the fleet head out into Christchurch Bay, an open sea. A real race between these two. It's like racing around the buoys, isn't it?
And that is the way it'll be in the North Atlantic, the South Atlantic, and it'll still be like that when they leave Baltimore and head to La Rochelle, and it'll still be like that when they come back into these waters on the 9th and final leg in May next year from La Rochelle to Southampton.
And this is what Kayard hopes will happen.
As they sail out onto the English Channel at the start of the 7th Whitbread, It is EF Language, skippered by Paul Kayard, leading Toshiba, skippered by Chris Dixon. Merit Cup, skippered by Grant Dalton, is third. Mark Fisher at the helm of Chessie Racing has made a very good start, fourth. Swedish Match is fifth, skippered by Gwyneth Krantz.
Back with Laurie Smith, now in 7th position. If anything, looking slightly happier there. Maguire at the helm. These guys in 7th, the British team back in the pack, but don't write them off. They're gonna be there or thereabouts as they head to Cape Town.
Well, I certainly wouldn't write them off, because while it might have been very public what we saw with the halyard problem aboard Laurie Smith's boat, and so that is where they are at the moment. All of the boats have problems. The key issue is how do you recover from it, how not to be affected by it.
Well, as the fleet head out to sea, a great start for Kayard, the British team back a bit, but all of these boats are in this race. Kayard's got the advantage, but we're going to see. There's a long way to go. There's a month of sailing.
Oh, what a spectacular start to this great race. It's all become a little quiet here now, but all the boats have followed the yachts out into the sea. They're just getting a little bit out of range, but we will of course have further reaction to the start of the race a little later on. But of course you will be able to follow their programme right throughout the 9 months. We will have a weekly report, in fact the first of which is on Friday on BBC Two. That is at 7 o'clock. Now you might be wondering what will be in that programme. Well, we've already seen that they have cameras on board. They also have editing equipment. Well, that means that we can stay in touch right the way